Welcome to this edition of the Talk of Simsbury. My name is Dominique Avery. It was just about a year ago that Peter Fairweather, an out-of-state consultant hired by the town of Simsbury, was my guest right here, talking about ways to improve economic development in town. He told me we have to play on our strengths, our great schools, our great quality of life, but also our beautiful downtown and our great recreational opportunities. Finally, Peter added, other towns would give their eye teeth to have what we have here in Simsbury and what we take for granted. But my guests today don't need Peter Fairweather to tell them that Simsbury is a special place. They are longtime members of the Simsbury Tourism Committee, Liz Banco and Barbara O'Connor, and Sarah Nielsen, who is the executive director of Simsbury Main Street Partnership, which has been working since the mid-90s to improve our downtown Main Street and to promote economic development and tourism. Thank you all for being here. It's such a wonderful opportunity. In full disclosure, I have to say I'm also a member of the Tourism Committee. I'm actually the co-chair. I took over for Liz. Mm-hmm. So Liz, a lot of towns don't have a tourism committee. Why do we have one, and why, you guys had a lot of forethought to start it. When did it start?
Well, actually, I have to give credit to the then first selectman, which was Anita Millard in 1994. We go back quite a ways. Some of us were originals, unfortunately. But, you know, her idea was to promote economic development, basically. That was the core through promotion of tourism to both the town and to outsiders. Keeping in mind that we wanted to retain our integrity, the character of our town, which was, you know, is a traditional New England town that we're so well known for. So that's when it started. It was a volunteer group, it still is a volunteer group of very hardworking, dedicated people who came from all different places, like to travel, love the town, wanted to promote it. So we realized, well, what a gem we had here, and we needed to do something about that. So that's how it got started. We started with monthly meetings in different venues around town so we could become more visible and also see what we had to offer. Part of it was an education for ourselves, so we could be ambassadors. We could talk about what there was to see, where to bring visitors, and where to eat, where to stay, and all of that. So that's really how we started.
We're still working. That. Yes. We still meet around, and that's it's one of the things that people like about being on the tourism committee is that we don't meet in a town hall meeting room. So Sarah, Main Street does a lot of the same things that tourism does, but you have a fairly substantial budget, and you have a person who's paid, the executive director, that's you. What was the purpose of Simsbury Main Street, and how and when did it get started?
Well, again, you know, I think the genesis of both tourism and Main Street kind of came about at the same time. In 94, 95, 96 is when we had the Economic Development Summit with then First Selectman Mary Glassman, who is our current First Selectman, to talk about how Simsbury could differentiate itself from its competitors, how we could really set ourselves apart from the Valley and from other towns. And so tourism came about, and at the same time we formed this nonprofit, this Main Street partnership, which is, you know, we're a private, not-for-profit corporation, but we have a very strong public-private partnership with the town. That's one of the things that happens. And we became part of this National Main Street Center. And so we do some of the things. I think we've had a wonderful relationship with tourism because, again, it wasn't, we're going to do tourism, and then we're going to do Main Street. It was this combined effort of tourism will take care of certain things and Main Street will take care of others. You know, in addition to promoting heritage tourism, which is more of our focus, we also do design issues. We work with things, for example, like Eno Memorial Hall. We do special events. We do marketing, branding, grant writing. So we have a little bit of a bigger focus, and I think that's where you need that full-time staff person.
You've had, before I go into Barbara, you've had some major successes. I mean, Simsbury has appeared on the national scene.
Well, and I would say Simsbury has had the major successes, and we've been pleased to be partners with a lot of these other amazing organizations. In 2006, Simsbury was one of the only Preserve America communities. It's a national White House recognition by the National Park Service. It was chaired at that time by First Lady Laura Bush. And then it was also went on to be Michelle Obama. And so we were nationally recognized as a destination that has promoted and kept its cultural, historic, and natural assets. So I think that was huge. You know, we were promoting and protecting those things that make us unique. And then in 2011, we are still the first and only town in Connecticut to be designated by the Trust, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, as one of their dozen distinctive destinations. Within 2 weeks of that huge announcement, we had more than 500 media hits. We made it into USA Today, National Geographic. We had a front page article in the Washington Post. We were featured twice now by the Boston Globe. So, I mean, that really has had some major successes. We've done the Martin Luther King, and I helped with promotion with the students for their documentary, which again, those students are incredibly talented. That had national acclaim. And then most recently, we're also the first bike-friendly town by the National League of American Cyclists. So
and the most bike-friendly and walk-friendly town voted
that's
in
right,
by
in
the state of Connecticut.
That's
yes.
true.
Right, that's
so,
right.
I mean, I think, again, we really have been building on these successes, and it couldn't have been done. It wasn't just Main Street. It was in cooperation with amazing partners in the town itself.
So now let me move on to Barbara. Barbara, you moved to town, I think, certainly more recently than Liz and I did. I don't know about Sarah. I'll find out later. And you were a marketing professional in your earlier life, and I think you still have a pretty fresh perspective on the town of Simsbury, as well as a national perspective, because your husband had a job that took you around to a lot of places.
Yes, my husband for more than 30 years worked for a very large hospitality company, and my children, still my three sons, say they don't have a hometown because we were transferred a lot, and all different types of areas. And when he retired from that firm but took a job with another firm here in Connecticut, he started the relocation process because we had it down to a science as to how we bought basically the same house in 4 different states. So he knew what to look for. And he called me one day and said, I found the town we have to live in. So I have to give you credit for Main Street, because he just fell in love with the Main Street of Simsbury and said, we're going to be back in New England. That's the kind of town I want to live in. It just has the look in that. And we, one thing we also learned through our many years of relocation is we have to feel at home in a place. We have to become a part of where we live. And when daycare costs got prohibitive with having children, I then turned to the professional volunteer route, whether it was, for the most part, the schools as they were growing up. But when I came up here, it was just a case of my only child who was still in school was in high school, and the last thing he wanted was his mother hanging around there. So I looked for other areas to use the talents I had, because I had kept up a little bit with PR and marketing and advertising, and through luck I had met you, and you told me about the committee, and it just seemed, since I had worked in promoting tourism, of course, it was a slightly bigger city, New Orleans, that had a few other things to offer, but it was something that gave me a chance to become part of the community, and so I was very happy to get involved in that aspect of it.
It is an extraordinary community, and it's and we do all here who live here take it for granted. But if you go back to the mid-'90s, first of all, our Main Street didn't look quite as beautiful as it looks now. And I don't think most people in town thought of us as a place that outsiders wanted to visit. Kids called it Simsboring. I mean, some of them still do, but so there has been a tremendous change, and but I still think that there are people in town who don't quite get the economic fallout from tourism.
Well, here's the other thing. I think a lot of times people forget all of the things that Simsbury has to offer. You know, we go to these meetings, and even I sat on the team that hired Peter Fairweather, that eventually selected him as the consultant, and we worked with him all the way up through. And when you got into these groups, and we talked about, you know, what are our favorite places? What is there to do in Simsbury? it just snowballed. You start out with things like the farms. We are so thrilled and lucky to have our agriculture heritage, which a lot of towns have given up.
Absolutely, and that's why we have our brochure.
And I was just going to say,
highlighting the farms, which we love.
yeah, I mean, everything from, the ice cream to the petting zoo
Absolutely.
to the wine trail, all in one town. But then you move outside of it and you talk about the adventure, the hiking and the biking and the kayaking, the places you can launch a boat, the state parks, all of these things, the Drake Hill Flower Bridge, which I have to say is my favorite spot in all of Simsbury. But you start listing all of these things and it almost becomes overwhelming that I think sometimes we forget that we have all of this right in our backyards.
I think the first audience that the tourism committee has to deal with is actually the residential.
Yes.
Because you don't realize you get into your one narrow little path of whether it's your kids or your job, and you don't realize what's out there. And it helps develop community pride when you understand everything that your town has to offer. So our first audience is really our neighbors.
And the nicest thing is getting somebody from outside to recognize it and to bring
Yes.
it to the front and have us think about it all over again.
It does.
Having a
It
visitor-
validates.
It validates having a visitor and saying, okay, let's go see one of these places. Let's go to a farm. Let's walk along the river. Whatever it is, really is important.
The buzzword in tourism, as I have observed it, is authentic. That we are not, and nobody made us. We grew this way. Our cemetery is in the middle of town. It's been there for centuries.
Right.
But I think you're right about being an ambassador to your own town, because I think we have a lot of turnover in town. And I think so many people are constantly moving in, they don't really know what we have. So let's talk a little bit about what we have been doing and what Main Street and Tourism does in terms of letting people know. Liz just referenced some of the brochures. One of them I see right there is a cell phone tour. Liz, I was going to go another direction, but that just reminded me. I think a lot of people don't know that we have a cell phone tour. You can use your cell phone, stop at 11 places downtown to learn about the various historic buildings. People walk by them and don't know what they are. Liz, that was your idea. Where did that idea come from?
I thought, we have a fairly small, compact Main Street, but it's beautiful, and we have original buildings. I had been in upstate New York in a small town, and they had even smaller Main Street, and they developed a walking tour, which I took on my cell phone, and I thought it was just a great idea. And you do see them around the country. Museums and other places are picking up on that. You don't even need a cell phone. We've had seniors call and say, because we have signs in front, you can just walk and find out a little bit about it. The map, the Hot Meadow Walk, which we've sort of reformulated to double as a cell phone tour kind of thing, highlights some of the history. And you mentioned the cemetery. There's a whole beautiful cemetery walk, and then the Historical Society has a very detailed description of all of their buildings, which we don't go into. So it just sort of took a life of its own. We got the signs going. And it's something you don't need people to do for you. You don't need a docent. You just take a walk, and it's just pretty incredible to get in. A friend of mine just went in the other day to one of the churches and was commenting on the windows, the stained glass windows, Tiffany windows.
Methodist Church.
The Methodist Church.
They just redid those.
Yeah,
windows.
that
They're
are
incredible.
gorgeous, and she had never been in. So it was an interesting thing.
So, Barbara, let me turn to you for a second. We, quite early, the Simsbury Tourism Committee sort of developed a website, and we've been through some changes. Our website hasn't always been wonderful, and they redid it, and now it's redone again. So what can people find on that website?
Well, actually, the Tourism Committee has been, playing off first the cell phone tour, going into social media and more of the technology influenced areas of communication. On the town website, there is a link to the tourism website, and on there you'll find all sorts of information, like information that's in our brochures is available on the website if you don't have the physical brochure. We've also got things like a foliage tour, because right within Simsbury it's so easy to see incredible foliage just in a quick, however long you want to make the tour. But there's that information. There's information just on general, names, phone numbers, addresses of various places in town. But I think even more importantly than the website on the town website is the Simsbury Tourism Facebook page that a few members of the committee put together that has been very good in providing information. I know my husband still is involved in relocation, and he gives out the Simsbury Facebook page address to people to give them a flavor of the town if they are interested in looking at Simsbury, to get an idea of what's up here. And that use of social media was instrumental in Simsbury being named one of the top 10 places in the state in the recent marketing sweepstakes, if you will, that the state of Connecticut had to highlight its different towns.
Who would have thought, and I would bet you, if you stopped somebody on the street in Simsbury, who would have thought that Simsbury would be in the top 10 tourism towns in the state? Sarah?
Well, I would have placed my bet on Simsbury.
But you see a lot of people. Do you think people would have thought that 20 years ago?
Well, again, I think that the things that we are coming to value as a community and a society, you're seeing recreation make a huge comeback. And what other place has the mountains, the river, the bike path, the performing arts center, the summer home of the symphony? So you're right. I don't think 20 years ago, absolutely. I don't think 20 years ago we would have thought that. But I think, again, the town has, and I think you pointed out, Liz, we want to do careful planning. That's what the town has done to keep our natural, our historic, and our cultural assets. Those are important to us as a community. And then to build around them entertainment, arts, all of the other things that are really kind of hot buttons right now for tourists and residents alike. And so, I think that 20 years ago, no. But 2014, absolutely.
There's
we're
so
in the
many
top
things
10.
that we take for granted that we don't even see anymore. That you just drive past it and you don't realize what a treasure there is in the historical society, in the farms, in the flower bridge. It's like, well, of course that's there.
Something else that we have that you don't really think of as tourism, but that I wanted to bring up was we had a meeting last year, I believe it was, at So Inspired, a quilting shop, and we were stunned to find out how much tourism that brings to town. People come, there are not that many quilting shops. Quilters apparently travel a lot. I'm not even, and then, so they make these tours, and then they come here, and they stay overnight, or sometimes they don't. We have to encourage them to. Sometimes they stay at the airport, or they eat in our restaurants.
Yes. Deb and Viv have done a phenomenal job, which is why they don't have to do so much advertising, because within those quilting societies, people come from all over the state and from out of state to go to So Inspired. And it's the same thing, I think when you were talking about the national publicity, I'm remiss in also mentioning that we recently, Main Street partnered with, the Pinchot Institute for Conservation, and we did the huge Gifford Pinchot documentary, which premiered nationally on television, and we gave SCTV, you guys actually got it a month early. But people also go to the 1820 house, which is the birthplace of Gifford Pinchot, from all over the world. The general manager, Jan Losi, she references people that come from all over the world just to stay where Gifford Pinchot was born. So again, those things that you don't necessarily think of that attract people from places far.
Or the Terrifill Gorge.
With
the whitewater kayaking has really become amazing.
All over.
Agreed.
All of that kind of stuff is just
So I learned
impressive.
a couple of weeks ago we have another tourist attraction, and that is the Friends of the Library book sale. I had no idea. I've volunteered for years on Sunday, but I've never been on Saturday morning. This year I went with my camera, and I got there before it opened. The line was from the front door of the high school all the way up the driveway and down the street.
Amazing.
The people at the front of the line had come the day before to reserve their spots, and they had come from places as far away as Saratoga, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, all over Massachusetts, Long Island, and they come every year and they eat in our restaurants. One woman said, she said, we're staying in Windsor, but we ate at Metro Beast last night and we dropped $100.
Oh, wow.
And I said, where do you have breakfast? Harvest. I mean, so
Yeah.
we are now busy making a list of restaurants to pass out when they're there, because we want to capture that business. But
Well,
I
and
was
again-
I was stunned by how far people came.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, I think when we talk about tourism, when we started doing the inventory, what we found out is that you need a certain amount of amenities for people to stay. You know, if you want them to stay more than 2 hours, then you need to have places to eat. And Simsbury is become, I mean, we've achieved quite the foodie
Right.
Look at the
reputation.
taste and how-
Yeah.
Well, not just
Yeah.
the taste in Simsbury, but I mean,
Right.
you're having Tyler Anderson and Chris
Yeah.
Prosperi and the
Millet
Tea, which is
just
Ryan
in the
Jones.
just in
Yeah.
the Hartford Current
Yep,
again.
but then we
Yeah.
also have those family-friendly places. You know, Steve Antonio celebrated their 50th anniversary, which in the restaurant world is like dog years. That's
Yes.
like 750
Yes,
years.
definitely.
You know, and you have Attilio's, and so you have Joe Pizza. So you have
Yeah.
all of those kind of in between, and then Harvest Cafe, which they do breakfast and lunch, but they do phenomenal catering. They do more wedding and upscale and corporate catering and pastels and everything in between that, you know, so we have the amenities where people they can come for an event, they can eat, they can stay over at an amazing hotel and extend their day.
But you know what we don't have, and this bothers me a lot. We don't have little stores. We have a lot of stores in Simsbury. They're concentrated on Route 44 in that area where we get a lot of income from. We have restaurants, but we have very few. I didn't really think about it until a friend of mine from London was here, and she thought she was in heaven. She loved the town. But as we were walking down the street, she said, where are the little shops that I can shop in and buy souvenirs?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we don't have a lot of places that do souvenirs, and I think through planning, you know, people say, well, where's your big clothing stores and where's your? We don't do big box retail. We do have a lot more independent stores though that are tucked away. For example, in the North Village, which is really reinvigorated right now, okay, which is near where Holloway's and everything. There's like 70-something mom and pop stores, and a lot of them are second and third generation that people don't remember or know about.
But I'm concerned that people are not sensitive. I mean, people in town are not sensitive to buying local. It's not the first thing that comes to their mind. The first thing that comes to their mind is Route 44, or, you know, we have a lot of malls near here. But I think we need to develop a mindset. Or am I wrong?
I think it's hard to we're never going to be that Route 44. We know that, and we've rejected big
But it's
boxes, and we don't want.
It's the small stores
I
like
think the
like
workshop
Lavery,
or the-
who just Fanula's, who just died. I just read that in the paper.
Yeah.
He
He was
was
a founding
such
board
an
member.
enthusiastic person for
absolutely.
Simsbury, and he tried to have a
did,
store.
he
And
did.
Well,
I
I will.
think workshop is working on that kind of a thing.
Well, I'll say this. The other thing is, the best thing that we can do as a community is remind people the value of shopping locally. There is an inherent positive when you shop at Fitzgerald's versus, say, a chain. And I won't name any specific chain, but when you shop at Fitzgerald's, that's a local person, and he gives back to the schools. He gives back to Relay for Life. And, you know, unlike some of the bigger chains where they do couponing or specials, anytime Fitzgerald's gives back to the schools, it's out of his pocket. It actually comes out of his profit. And so if we can remind people, I think, Neckers, I had a great story, you know, talking about Facebook. Simsbury, Connecticut, we're hitting almost 3,000 members. And somebody was sharing that they'd shopped somewhere else and the customer service was horrible. And then they went to Neckers. And
Yeah, I saw that on-
They were
on
walked
Facebook.
right up to it. And they were reminded again.
it was ping pong balls.
Yeah.
Right.
They're reminded again, though, shop Simsbury, shop local first. And I think that's a good point.
Yeah, so that
It's-
was my
I think
point.
is the takeaway is that for residents, we have so many amazing jewels and gems, but think of us first.
Right.
Because
and
because
we
that's
have the specialty stores. Not everything. We've got some wonderful jewelry stores.
Oh,
We've got a
fantastic.
couple of great hardware stores.
Yep.
You know, we're concentrated.
Well,
we don't have that.
we have some
broad.
more gift shops that
But
are
we
opening
have a
up
few
both in the
gift
north
shops.
end. We have a beautiful upscale consignment now in Simsbury Township.
True,
So
true.
I
Little
think
by
we're
little,
getting
I
there.
think,
But
yeah.
again, it's that reminder to shop. Look at Simsbury first.
Right.
Is a great reminder.
So we have a few minutes. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that any one of you, any points that you really want to make?
We have a couple days.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, Barbara, we were talking about relocation, and I know for me as a realtor dealing with that aspect, and Sarah, we've talked about brochures and whatnot and reaching out. And education, obviously, is number one. So, and it always continues to be. The schools are the big draw. So, with Main Street, we were working on a wonderful brochure and, a few other ideas. I think we have to, we're doing it in so many different levels here. I think I love bringing people around and sort of giving the grand tour, going to Simsbury Farms, going up, getting ice cream, doing, depending on what the season is, getting over to the river, that kind of thing. So I think, although we're doing less relocation, obviously, now than we used to, that's still a part. And Simsbury is up there. This is a desirable town.
Well, it wasn't Money Magazine's top place
Yeah.
to live
We're
in
in the top
Connecticut.
50 small towns
Quality of
again,
life
and
and-
we've done
yeah.
that. We've done that for 3 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And I mean, the final thing is just a reminder to the residents. We talked
Yeah.
about when Main Street embarked with tourism on the Heritage Tourism campaign. It was
Yeah.
to get residents empowered to be ambassadors, because when you enjoy your community and then you bring in your friends and family, you get to show them. And that's our most powerful weapon, is our residents that live here, that enjoy all of the things like the farms and the splash pad and the multitude of things that we talked about. But empowering them to be our ambassadors and to continue spreading that positive word that combats all of the other, we're 20 years old and it's boring, and that really combats that reputation that this is an active, vibrant place, fun place to live.
I'm going to have to stop there because our time is up. It's gone so fast. I want to thank everyone here at SCTV for getting the show on the air, and thanks especially to my guests, Liz Banco, Sarah Nielsen, and Barbara O'Connor. And I also want to give special thanks to Kathy Oakes, who is also a member of the Tourism Committee, who was behind one of the cameras today. And then thank you to Nix and Corey. Finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the show, you can find it on our website at simsburytv.org. And don't forget to like us both on SCTV and Simsbury Tourism on Facebook. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for the Talk of Simsbury.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.